Chapter 9, The Platforms. In this chapter, I'll talk about where they are and where they're going. Debating the current state of the internet has become as much a passion for some people as sports, music, and celebrities. For years now, the 5 to 15 platforms that dominate our society, whether Blogger and MySpace a decade ago, or Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook today, have been fuel for conversations around what stock prices will do, where society is going, and where creative things are happening. These hubs have become integrated into our daily lives as much as television, radio, and magazines used to be. And there's no more interesting time to talk about them than while they still capture the consumer's imagination. It's a challenge to answer questions about social platforms because in the time it takes you to utter one sentence, they usually changed again. However, as I updated and elaborated upon these answers, I realized that the real value isn't just in the analysis, but in the overall patterns that emerge. This isn't the first time we've seen tech wreak enormous cultural and social change in our world, and it won't be the last. And we're all still here. Businesses are still being built, people are still innovating, and the world keeps turning. My hope is that listening to this chapter will help marketers and brand managers and entrepreneurs welcome change rather than fear it.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and I am thrilled to read questions for Gary Vee's new book, Ask Gary Vee. Gary and I are old friends. We both do social media. We both do angel investing. He likes the Jets. I love the Knicks. We both have a dream to buy a professional sports team. And we're both busting our butts to get there. And so when Gary asked me to read some questions, I said, of course, yes, anything for you, Gary, especially because that puts a favor in the old favor bank for when I need him to do a blurb or an intro for my book. Quid pro quo, Gary, quid pro quo. Okay, so let's read some questions. What will the next big social network have to do to challenge Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram?
The ironic thing is that next big social network has happened. It's called Snapchat, and it did what I answered on the show, which was, one, it has to win the youth market. Let me rephrase, it doesn't have to because Instagram really didn't come directly from the youth market, though the youth market jumped on pretty quickly. Twitter never won the youth market, if you ask me. That was always their vulnerability. But the patterns are clear with MySpace, with Facebook, with Snapchat, and with many others. The youth market, or a quick pivot to the youth market embracing something, is massively important because you get the real scale in that kind of 12 to 22 because there's enough humans there, and then what they do, and notice I said 22 because that college 18 to 22 is huge, and then what they do is they start graduating, and more importantly they start aging down their parents and grandparents if they want to see pictures, know what they're up to, and just hang out with them. So youth market for sure. The other thing they need to do, especially at this point, now that we're an established market, different than the early days, is they have to bring something new of use. They have to be useful. For example, Instagram made people better at taking pictures. With those filters, it started the process and then kind of almost became a social network. Snapchat actually allowed kids to hide from their parents hanging out with them on Facebook. It created a new game. Both Instagram and Snapchat, the last two winners of this game, did something completely different than Facebook and Twitter did. And I will think that the next one, whether it's live streaming, whether it's a virtual reality play, an audio, who's going to win the audio social network at scale where you're just recording things? Whoever's going to be next is going to have to do one of those two things at least.
Which currently popular social media platform will likely be extinct by 2020?
At the time when I answered this question, my answer was Tumblr and Google+. And Google+ is already gone for the most part, so that was right, and Tumblr's well on its way. I'm going to add something because I think it's really cool to make the book better in audio form since it's a little fresher. I'm going to say that Twitter is in trouble. And if Twitter doesn't make substantial changes, and by the way, I do believe that Jack Dorsey is going to win and make these great changes. So I'm not predicting this with oomph, but I will say if they stumble or if Square becomes too big and Jack has to focus there, Twitter is the only major platform that's vulnerable. Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram are 100% firm for the next 5 years. I feel very confident. They haven't done enough wrong yet, and it takes 5 years to unwind. Twitter's been doing wrong for 3-4 years on the product side, which is why I'm saying another 5 years, another 4 years, it's becoming vulnerable. I mean, look, I spend all my time looking at 18 to 24-year-olds. Their level of Twitter right now is almost non-existent. It is an Instagram, Snapchat world, period. There's no gateway usage. There's people that have been on it like myself that are kind of holding it afloat, and media companies and things of that nature. I'm really excited for Twitter to shift and do some new things. I think it's coming. But if they don't, that is the addition to extinct is, look, MySpace is not extinct. I think we're going to use it as a slang term as people aren't really using it. And I think Twitter's a little vulnerable.
Social media marketing is not as dominant in other countries as it is here in the United States. For example, in Germany, a meerkat is nothing more than a cute animal. Is it really worth our time to put content on these platforms, then sit, wait, and hope they gain traction?
No, you shouldn't waste your time if you don't think that something's going to bring you value. You should invest time into going on these platforms if you believe your country is going to embrace it. Or, even more fun, what I do. I don't predict. I don't hope. I actually execute when it actually happens. I've been watching Snapchat for 3 years. I invested in it 18 months before I started seriously using it for my own personal brand. So I would tell you that no, of course not. Here's the advantage of not being in the United States. You know that these things are happening. You can watch what's happening with your country with that product. If you start seeing all the 8th graders in Berlin starting to use Snapchat, you can make the assumption that you're about to have what happened here, what happened in the US in the last 3 years. Then you can jump on it and be there when it actually explodes. So I would say nobody should ever just hope and overcommit to something that's not happening, but you should take advantage. And I'm going to say it again. Take advantage that you're not in the U.S., watch what's happening in the U.S., see if that's being replicated in your country, and when you see it happening, pounce on it.
I make my living off YouTube, and lately people have been asking what my next step is because they don't think YouTube can last forever. I think it will only continue to grow. Should I hedge my risk by expanding to other platforms or stick to YouTube?
And I'm going to laugh because the amount of stories that I've dug up as I've looked into history about people in the radio industry saying to TV stars, like, when are you going to do a big radio show or this, that, and the other thing? It's just so silly. Or when, TV wasn't that big of a medium, believe it or not. It was all movie stars in the 80s and 90s, and now TV is the big winner, right? YouTube is going to be here forever. It's just, that's it, guys. Like, get it, wrap it around your head. I'd much rather be a big YouTube star in 10 years than a big television star. And so I think your intuition is absolutely right. The only reason they're saying that is they didn't believe YouTube was going to win in the first place. They can't believe what you're doing on YouTube, and they definitely don't think YouTube's going to be winning in the future. So far, they're 0 for 2. I have a funny feeling they're going to be 0 for 3.
Why do you rarely recommend YouTube in your digital recommendations despite the 1 billion active users per month? Because, and this breaks my heart to say out loud, because I'm an idiot. Because I think that I was so affected by writing about YouTube at nausea with Crush It and yelling and screaming about YouTube in 2009, 2008, 2007, 2009, 2010, 2011, that I got fatigue of talking about YouTube, took it for granted. It's funny, off the last question, YouTube to me is such an establishment, even more so than Facebook. I think that's why. And don't forget, YouTube is a real hardcore content play, right? It's video content and there's comments, and that's your kind of social aspect. Facebook, Twitter, all these things, they were more social media to me than content management systems, where YouTube's really a content management system with community in the comments, anonymous, not very healthy communities. So I think those two little things are probably it. One was fatigue. 2 was the fact that I see it a little bit more content in social networks, and that's what I was focused on. But the truth is, it's number 3. It's just me not executing good enough. And I've actually started trying to do more YouTube. Actually, this question actually impacted me, and I started trying to up my YouTube communication and game, and I'm glad I did. Is there a value to following thousands of people on Twitter, or should you only follow those who bring value to you? People follow thousands of people on Twitter for 2 reasons. 1, they just like content overload, and 2, they're hoping that they follow them back. Both are a mistake, probably. Look, I'm not going to tell you what to do and how you consume content, but if you're following a bunch of people with the hope they follow you back, usually that's not a very valuable follower. It's somebody who's probably just doing it out of courtesy, but they're not going to really consume your content. It's like having somebody subscribe to your email, but they're not opening the email when you send it, right? Number 2, listen, I mean, there's a balance of how much content one can consume, right? If you can consume a lot, knock yourself out. But for the most part, I don't see the massive value. Now, one will jump in and tweet me after hearing this and say, Gary, you follow 7,000 people or 8,000 people. That's true, but I'm going to give you a little bit secret here. I don't follow anybody. A lot of those people I followed from the beginning, way back in 2007, 8, 9, out of the courtesy, because that's what you used to do back then. But I haven't consumed my Twitter stream in years. I only consume the people mentioning me that I can engage with. I understand that marketers ruin everything, but is Twitter's latest algorithm change going to damage your user experience and the essence of Twitter? I think
the supply and demand of information is one of the most interesting things in the world. And I believe the way that Facebook and Twitter have handled the last half decade of information overload will be reviewed by business people for the next 100 years. And let me tell you why. Facebook made a decision to not let you see everything that was being put out because it knew that so much supply would mute you out and you'd stop paying attention. Just like email. We used to open our emails at a 90% clip. Now we're in the 30s on most newsletters because it was just too much. Twitter let the fire hose go. And I think in that shift in the last half decade, they separated themselves for other reasons as well, but that was a big one on the product side. I think Twitter actually desperately needs not to show you everything while still taking advantage of what Twitter is, which is the real-time water cooler of our society. If there is a national event, if there is a Super Bowl miraculous catch, I'm going to go way back. When Jessica fell down the well in Texas in 1985, we need Twitter for those moments. But you need to be able to toggle. And I think the default needs to be not everything. And then it needs to switch into breaking news like the world used to do on television. So I believe that the new Twitter shift in that direction, which is not fully into integration yet, is going to really help the business.
I don't understand why I barely see Gary Vee in my Twitter feed, but you're all over my Facebook account. Please explain.
Easy. Supply and demand of attention. This is exactly what I was referring to in the last question. Even though every one of my tweets, and there's a lot of them, have the potential for you to see them, you're not because you're overloaded. You follow too many people, or you just don't pay attention as much, or the way it's being executed in the feed is not a visual enough stimulant for you to stop. Versus Facebook, where my fan page is putting out content, you don't necessarily see everyone, but you're actually paying attention on Facebook to everything that's coming in your feed because you're not getting overloaded.
Why is Twitter so much like a wall in a public bathroom?
You've got to love fan questions. Look, I would say that it's not as bad as the secret and anonymous apps that we saw, which were really, really bad. Look, this is what people do. I mean, people do this on every platform. This is happening on Facebook and Instagram as well. Maybe you're just seeing it there. But the fact of the matter is, the reason I think Facebook is probably a little bit cleaner is it's your actual identity. A lot of people are creating kind of like fake Twitter accounts. But for the most part, I do think that Facebook's a little bit cleaner because it's your real identity 99% of the time. And I do think those anonymous apps, it got really bad because everybody was hiding.
Why are so many people afraid of Snapchat, especially marketers?
Because they're old. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Most marketers are 30, 40, for the most part. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, they've been hearing about things about, naked pictures and sexting and 13-year-olds and how they sell real estate or technology, SaaS products or candles on Snapchat. They couldn't. But now it's getting older. And just like Facebook, which originally started as just college kids, you weren't selling, products to 50-year-olds on Facebook in 2006 and 7. Snapchat's aging up quicker than Facebook because we're now at scale on the internet. And over the next 3 to 4 years, marketers are not only not going to be scared, they're going to be making love to that little ghost.
Hey everybody, Kevin Jonas here, formerly of the Jonas Brothers. I am now heading up a user acquisition team for apps around the world. I'm very excited to be reading the next 10 questions in the AskGaryVee book. All right, here we go. Marketing to the next generation through Facebook is on par with putting ads in the yellow pages. Facebook is dead. What's next?
So Kevin, first of all, thanks for reading a question. Just to clear up for everybody who's been listening along the way, these are questions that came in from fans from the show or on social networks. So I'm about to get really pissed, but I'm not yelling at my boy, Kevin Jonas. Okay, Facebook being dead? Let me tell you what's dead. Your pulse on what's actually going on in the marketing world. As a matter of fact, as this second looms, Facebook is the #1 marketing platform in the world. It is working better than most things have ever worked. TV at its heyday, Google AdWords. It is an incredible platform. I think you're hyperbolizing or trying to act cool that you're on to the next thing, and that's fine. There's plenty of people that get mad when a band goes mainstream and they say now they're dead. Cool, fine. You want to be that guy? Go find your next indie band. Go find some app by 2 kids. Go support Ello or whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, Facebook is incredible. It's just starting to hit its great moment. And I think it would be a huge disservice for anybody listening to this that they didn't put enormous amounts of energy in figuring Facebook ads out, working on Facebook, driving on Facebook, and creating business results from Facebook.
I don't get it, Facebook. You decide not to show my book pages to people. Do you think a lack of success will make me give you more money?
One of the great things that happened in marketing in the last 3 years was that Facebook slowed down organic reach And everybody got so upset. What this question's alluding to is that all of a sudden, instead of the 4,000 people that were seeing your post, 300 of your 4,000 saw it. And of course, as you can imagine, everybody got upset. They think they were tricked by Facebook. And now I have to pay to reach these people. What they don't understand is one of the great ad products of all time grew from frustration. And what Facebook was actually doing, and I referred to it a couple of questions ago, was saving its product and giving you a chance to actually reach those users. Because in 2 years, you would have reached 0. How do you think all the people that have huge MySpace followings think now? How do you think the people that have huge followings on MySpace feel now that nobody's there, even though they, quote unquote, have 10 million people there? So what Facebook did, my friend, is an amazing thing. It gave you a chance to use that platform for a long time. Sure, you had to take 1 step backwards to take 2 steps forward. But let me just remind you, if you want to reach anybody in the world, you've got to pay for it. You know, CBS isn't giving you commercial time for kicks and giggles. The New York Times isn't giving you a full-page ad just because they like you. The radio station isn't letting you promote because you're a good kid. What they did was absolutely right, and you need to take full advantage of it, because the truth is, it works. Period. End of story. Yeah, you gotta pay, but it's better than it not existing at all.
Will Facebook video become a rival for YouTube as a monetization video platform?
Facebook is a beast and already competing with numbers that are humongous against YouTube. There's enormous attention there, guys. That's just the bottom line. Same thing with Snapchat. Numbers just came out from Snapchat saying that they're only 1 billion views less than Facebook, and they're a 15th of the size. So there's a lot of competition for your eyeballs right now, all happening on mobile devices where Facebook and Snapchat, let's call it what it is, are more native than YouTube. YouTube started as a desktop platform, and Facebook made an incredible shift there very quickly, and Snapchat grew from it. So there's real competition for those eyeballs that YouTube has, and absolutely anywhere there's eyeballs, there's monetization. So Facebook is a major video platform right now, and there's enormous monetization opportunities. They just have to turn on that switch.
3 seconds counts as a view for Facebook video. Moderately misleading metric or increasingly bullshit metric?
What's bullshit is how people consume data. So they're showing you how many people have watched for 3 seconds. They count that as a view. Cool. What you need to do is look at your analytics on the back end and see that of the 13,000 people that watched it for 3 seconds, 719 of them watched it for 6 minutes. And then you need to remarket to those people. So the problem here is not the metrics. Every industry does that. You know what's more misleading? Having 2,000 Nielsen boxes in homes in America and saying that represents all 300 million of us viewing television. You know what's misleading? Some dude standing on top of a building, clicking a clicker, see how many cars drove by, and then coming up with metrics for the billboard. Because, you know, every person looks at every billboard every time they drive by it. You know what that is? That's Facebook hate, and it's all around us. By the way, let me make something very clear here. I don't give a crap about Facebook. If Facebook's gone tomorrow, I could care less. I just like it because it's working right now. And so the more people are upset about certain things, the longer they don't jump on the platform, the longer I can use it to get off what I need to get off.
My little sister has Insta and Snapchat, but has no interest in Facebook. What do you think the future holds for Facebook?
Well, let's remember that Facebook tried to buy Snapchat almost 2 years ago now for $3 billion. So I think Mark has proven through Oculus, through WhatsApp, through Instagram, that he's going to buy where attention is anytime he can. And so I think that the future is tremendous because the chief executive officer clearly has an understanding of what the right thing to do is for growth. Now, I think social networks are super interesting. It is my belief that everybody who's 35 and older is going to maintain a presence on Facebook for a very long time. Let me paint you a picture. You know how when you're a kid, you kind of go to a lot of different bars, you go to a lot of different clubs, you're exploring, but then you get older, you get married, and then your wife or your husband and you have that place or two that you always go and you kind of settle in? I think that's going to happen in the next 30, 40 years with social networks. I think people are going to have their generation. I grew up a Facebook kid. I still use the other ones, but Facebook's there for me. I think Snapchat's generation right now will always use Snapchat to some degree for a very long time. And then new things will pop up. So I think that the future is extremely bright for Facebook. And I think that your sister is going to be part of the Snapchat generation.
Do you think eBay will become irrelevant if they don't innovate?
Yes, I believe every company will become irrelevant if they don't innovate. The question is, in what period of time? It is my belief that eBay has done such a good job for so long that they will be around for 10 years if they do nothing right for the next 10 years. But If somebody comes along and replicates the original eBay, which is more flea market and garage sale and less retailer, and they execute perfectly for 4 years, while eBay doesn't respond properly for 4 years, then they can be knocked off the pedestal, like every company in the world of all time.
Blogging doesn't seem to be as popular as it was a number of years ago. Does it have a future when everyone is renting social media space?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are making a very bad strategy of not understanding that blogging and email marketing is still extremely relevant. I don't talk about those things, and I diss on them. I diss on them on the value sometimes in them, right? That you're putting too much energy and you're not doing the new stuff. And then some people take that way too extreme in the other way, and they only do the new stuff and not the stuff that's tried and true. A blog is a home on the internet, something that can never be taken away from you, something that you can never get mad at Facebook for from not allowing you to reach everybody. So much like email, blogging is kind of an infrastructure on top of the internet itself that has no other party involved and you're in control of, so it's a very smart strategy. What's not smart is to not go all in on all things that work to the best of your abilities. And so I'm a huge fan of blogging. I've changed my blog 3 times in the last 3 years because I can keep trying to get it right. I think I finally hit it. By the way, hit me up. Tell me what you think of GaryVaynerchuk.com. I finally hit it, but it's very important. It's a place I can control everything. So I'm excited that so many people are downplaying their blogs because it's become a new advantage for me.
Number of monthly users aside, do you think Instagram is actually a larger social network than Twitter?
This is really fun because at the time it had less users. Now it has more users. So that kind of settles that. And I'm glad I get to be on the right side of history because I went on a rant saying it's just a matter of time and it's a attention thing. And I kind of went into the, well, great. Twitter can have 100,000 billion trillion users and Instagram can have 87. But if I'm getting 4 paying attention on Twitter and 80 paying attention on Instagram, which one's actually bigger? And so both have played out. And so I think this is really cool, guys. AskGaryVee started in 2014. It is the beginning of 2016, and some of these questions are already obsolete and need updating. That is the speed which we live in. Instagram right now is the current social network, meaning 15 to 55 prime time, competing with its own brother, Facebook, as the #1 social network in the world. I talk a lot about Snapchat. It's the emerging one. But if you ask me to be only on one place right now to sell, to build a brand, the only place I would pick would be Instagram if they get the Facebook ad stuff working perfectly, because right now it's a little tweaky, but Instagram is the spot for 2016.
How will Instagram evolve in the future?
Well, listen, I'm not in the predicting business, so I don't want to get this wrong, but I think one thing for certain is its ad product is going to continue to evolve and use the infrastructure of Facebook's data to be able to target people on Instagram in a far more efficient way. And I'm really kind of interested in that and excited about that aspect. I think the other thing that'll be super interesting is if you want to go really long term and kind of have some fun here, it'll be interesting to see where Instagram's integration with virtual reality is. Stick with me here. I'm going to get weird. Can you go inside the picture, right? Can you go inside your friend's picture? So I'm getting into some fun kind of like 10, 15 years stuff from now. I think in the short term, while phones continue to be the dominant force, I think that Instagram is going to be very similar to the way it is now while tweaking its attention graph because that's what Facebook's religion is. And I think there could be some fun little, could GIF integration come? Can shopping come? Yeah, a lot of cool stuff can come. I think Facebook learned a lot about Facebook, about what happened at Twitter. They're going to be very careful, especially with Kevin Systrom being the CEO of Instagram. That's his baby. They're going to be very careful to kind of quote unquote ruin it, change it too much. Small, interesting tweaks along the way, nothing too drastic.
Facebook and Twitter make it easy to manage separate pages and accounts, but not Instagram. Is there a way to successfully use one account for all 3 things without being shit, jumbled, and ineffective?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's not that difficult to sign in and sign out of your Instagram account if you want to have multiple accounts. So let's not get crazy here. Let's also remember the other 2 platforms are much older than Instagram, and they're attacking the things that they value the most. I think the thing that you should think about here is if the friction is very light for the upside, I hear people complaining about these silly things with these young platforms all the time. It takes you 13 seconds to sign out of Instagram, sign back in on your other account, and get to a moving. So they may make it easier over time. Things like Hootsuite and other products may integrate it and make it easy for you to switch back and forth. But the fact of the matter is, I think this is ticky-tacky and minor leagues. Just switch the accounts.
Hey guys, it's Troy Carter, founder, CEO of Atom Factory, and I'm here very excited to read the next 10 questions in the Ask Gary V book. Thanks for having me, Gary. People who write essays as their Instagram captions, what the hell are they thinking? We're there to look at pics, not read endless shit.
Troy, thanks so much. Guys, if you don't know Troy, amazing music entrepreneur, great guy. I actually disagree. I think you are there to read endless stuff. This is, again, somebody who's probably been on the platform for a long time and is now being romantic. You know, this is a good chance to rant on something. You know what I love? I love when a youngster comes up and changes a platform like Twitter or Facebook, and the old people, the people who've been on there for 5 years, cry about it, and the kid's like, ha ha ha, I'm doing cool stuff. But then that kid, their new thing was Instagram, and they used it as a kid the whole way, and now a younger kid comes along and changes it on them, and they become the old guy in the room. Who says that you are the judge of how Instagram copy should be used? I know it started as pictures, but people hack on things forever. That's just the way it is. Just like reality TV wasn't real TV, the actors said, the people that were romantic about it, right? So, nonetheless, I do think that you should write long copy in Instagram. I think Instagram is a place where people's attention is, and if you support great long copy with a great picture, I think that's a great execution. As a matter of fact, it's my best execution on Instagram right now. I'm literally putting blog posts in Instagram, and my audience, because I'm bringing quality content in that form, is enjoying it. Now, some may not, and I understand where it started, but it's not where a product starts. It's where it finishes.
Like, why is my dad following me on Instagram? Like, no, that's not acceptable.
I have bad news for you. Dad's coming to Snapchat next week, too. This is the game, my friends. It will never end. It's cops and robbers. It's cat and mouse. Things will start young. They will age up. 16-year-olds will look around and say, this stinks. I'm going somewhere else. And new billion-dollar social networks will be born.
People ruined the artistic intention of Instagram. Like, now people try to sell refrigerators on it. The fuck?
One of my favorite quotes that gets a lot of people's attention is, marketers ruin everything. And as a very good marketer, I'm very proud that I ruin these platforms because that's just the way it is. I'm sorry to say, any place where people hang out will eventually become a capitalistic environment. And that's what's happening, kiddo. Sorry, get used to it.
Instagram posted that they're going to start advertising on the timeline in the UK. More than 6,300 comments protested that they're going to ruin it and threaten to leave the platform. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are quite interesting. I like to stay away from politics, but I'm going to go there right now. In 2004, I had several friends tell me that if George W. Bush was reelected, they would move to Canada. In 2012, I had several friends tell me that if Barack Obama was reelected, they would move to Canada. All of those friends are happily living in the United States of America. My thoughts are, people talk shit and don't back it up with actions. All those people said they were going to leave. And as a matter of fact, this just popped an idea in my mind. Literally, when I'm done recording this answer, I'm going to take a picture of this read and I'm going to send it to my team. I'm going to go have them look at every person that left a comment that day and see if they're still active on Instagram. Here's my prediction without the work, 6,300. I predict that 6,300 of the 6,300 are still on Instagram. That's my thought. Listen, it is what it is. I get it. We don't love advertising, but if a product brings you enough value, you will absolutely accept advertising. Or if Instagram comes down and says, look, cool, no advertising, $83 a month. Who's in? So you pick.
I'm wondering what you think of direct message on Instagram. Is it an untapped resource?
I love the DM feature on Instagram. I just want to caution everybody, if you think you're going to go DM people right now to sell them, it's like kind of texting somebody on their phone without permission. It's going to be met with enormous pushback and they're going to be upset and you're going to go in for a sale and you're going to lose them forever. So I like the functionality. I think you can do some clever stuff by posting something and tell people to DM you. You can DM them back. There's a lot of clever things you can do with the functionality, but I know where you're going with this question. Do not start DMing people on Instagram and telling them to buy socks from your new sock startup.
What's your take on podcasting? You're playing in the space, but not all in. Not worth it yet?
You know, I'm not playing in podcasting, and so I have a podcast. Anybody listening, it's clearly you like listening, please download right now. As a matter of fact, stop everything you're doing, pull over, and download the AskGaryVee podcast. That would be awesome. Good opportunity there for a right hook for me. But it is the audio of my video show, the AskGaryVee show, and that's what the question refers to, not all in. I'm not actually doing a pure play podcast. It's the audio from that show. I'm a huge fan of podcasting. It's why I'm even willing to not be native in audio and still do it, even though that's kind of against my thing. It's close enough, and I think there's enough value, but I'm a humongous fan of the medium. I think a ton of people have been very successful on the medium. I think it continues to grow. There's a lot of different ways to communicate to people in the world. Audio happens to be one of them. I'm not sitting in this goddamn booth when I'm busy as shit for 6 hours at a time over 4 days to get this done because I don't believe in audio. I'm a huge, huge fan of podcasting. If you think you have a radio voice and have something to say, boy, should you jump on it.
As a man, I find it extremely hard to accept that other men use Pinterest. How do I get over this bias?
You get over this bias by stop being a dickhead. I mean, that's a ludicrous judgment I'm pissed right now. You've changed the tone. The next 3 answers are going to be salty because this guy really pisses me off. I mean, I don't even know what that means. I mean, we threw it in here because we like to have a little fun, and it gives me an opportunity to talk about the intriguing debate of will Pinterest become more male centric over the next half decade. I'm very fascinated myself. It still hasn't happened. It is happening in Europe and other parts of the world. So in the US, it hasn't, where it originated. Ben Silverman's an amazing CEO at Pinterest. I'm a very, very big believer in him, and I'm curious what's going to happen. But if it even doesn't become that, it has all the attention of females 25 to 65 in America and around the world, and is a humongous platform for a very big thing called shopping.
There's a buzz around Pinterest advertising, and they're slowly letting business accounts in. Are you optimistic?
At the time of this question from the show, I was very optimistic. I'm a hair less optimistic right now because it's just taking a lot of time. Pinterest, I'm your biggest fan. Please get your act together. Get these products out. But the search functionality on Pinterest, when a female customer goes on there and says rugs, carpets, blouses, peanut butter treats, parties, living rooms, to be the first result, like a Google ad, and it's visual, and then Pinterest keeping a percentage of the sale if I click it and buy it from that website. It's a big, 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 big business. I just can't wait for it to actually work.
What are your thoughts on using Kickstarter to start a business?
Look, Oculus Rift did it. It was one of the biggest, most successful things that ever happened, and it sold for $2 billion to Facebook, so that was good. And then that's obviously kind of the North Star example, but there are thousands, tens of thousands of businesses that have succeeded on it. I think it's incredible, and I think that if you can't find capital, and if you can't make it go without raising money, that Kickstarter is absolutely the #1 way to get going. But I'm going to pause there. There are a million Kickstarters that didn't take off because the product and the business sucked. So just like we've always been talking, I, aka the internet, aka social networks and platforms, can give you an at-bat. But can you hit the fastball?
What do you think of Ello?
So this question, when it came up, is probably why I did the Ask Gary Vee show in the first place. I bet on myself to be historically correct. Everybody was in a fancy to the headline of a different kind of Facebook that wasn't going to sell your data, blah, 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 blah. And everybody thought Ello was going to be so huge. All the conspiracy theorists and the hippies and the anti-establishment and the dreamers and all this stuff. And I came out and said, I don't think it's going to work. And it comes back to people moving to Canada and all this stuff and not acting on things. And more importantly, the pedigree of who created it. Not that I didn't know them, but I wasn't guaranteed that they were going to do it. The product wasn't very good. And so it won the PR game as the anti-Facebook, and it sounded good. But the anti-Facebook was already happening. It was called Snapchat. And so I look back fondly at this answer, and I recall it with you now that Ello is clearly not happening 18 months later. Still could. I think they raised some money, but so far I'm sticking to my original prediction, which is it's not going anywhere.
Hey there, it's Alexis Ohanian. I am the best-selling author of Without Their Permission, an investor in over 125 tech companies, and probably best known for co-founding Reddit, which is what keeps me out of trouble these days. I'm pretty amped to be reading the next 10 questions in the AskGaryVee book, so thanks for having me. What's your opinion on listicle sites?
Alexis, first of all, real quick, big shout out to you. I know you're a huge Redskins fan, and I'm super happy that you actually finally made the playoffs. Sorry you lost your game. Anyway, listicle sites, I think they were super smart. I know that a lot of people grew up with Life and Time magazine and then the Times and the Journal, and there's a whole generation of kids that grew up now with BuzzFeed and Upworthy and things of that nature, and there was a moment in time for that, and it's great. We kind of talked about this with headlines a little bit earlier in this audiobook. I'm a fan of them. I still think there's a place for them, but I do believe that they're on the other side of the supply and demand curve. Too many people did the same thing, and now there's too much of it, and I think that The thesis is right, things that capture people's attention. It's kind of like changing up pace in an audiobook. You got to stop them a little bit to keep paying attention. I just think that it's played out a little bit, but the best of the group will still succeed. It's kind of like reality shows. There was a lot of them on TV in 98, 99, 2000. They're still around. It's still a genre, but they're not every single thing on TV like some predicted. And that's my prediction. 3 to 4 of them, including BuzzFeed, because Jonah Peretti's an incredible CEO, I think will be around, and I think a lot of the wannabes will be gone.
Do you think email will be more or less relevant in the next 5 years?
So this is fun. I assume that this is being asked as a strategy, email marketing, and so email marketing continues to decline back to supply and demand of attention. I mean, I feel like I almost should call this book Supply and Demand of Attention. It is what I love to talk about. I had open rates of 80, 90% in the late 90s. 80, 90%. I know some of you driving, listening to this, just crashed your cars because you're in the 20s and 30s like I am because the supply and demand is gone. And so I think email will continue to struggle as a marketing platform. And let me define struggle. It will continue to bleed, but still be one of the best ways to do it. It's huge. Wine Library's built on it. The Gap is built on it. Macy's is built on it. I mean, Bed Bath & Beyond is built on it. I mean, it's huge, but it is trickling and trickling and trickling the way of direct mail, the way of radio, the way of television. They all stay forever once they become something. They just start getting less valuable over time. So you need to be good at it, but you need to surround yourself with the other things. In the last 5 weeks, I've been in 3 separate meetings where the companies finally realized, oh crap, we can't just rely on email because they're starting to see the numbers go away. Oh darn, we should have invested in Facebook. And I'm telling them, why don't you start investing in Snapchat or something else now to catch that wave? Get it?
What are your thoughts on Reddit? Is it even social? Is it useful? Well, I already know the answer to that.
This is so fun. This is very meta and very cool. I'm smiling ear to ear. Reddit is an incredibly interesting community. Huge. Just bulletin board marketing, very different. One thing that everybody mistakes is they go in there and they think they can spam that community. Do not go into Reddit, create a profile, then go into a community and be like, comment. I can't go to the wine Reddit and be like, hey, check out my wine deals. I mean, they will kill you. They will flame you. They will destroy you. They will show up. They won't show up. They might show up to your house and punch you in the face. I mean, that is an absolute mistake. Now, Reddit has some ad products. Lex is back to being involved in Reddit, and I'm excited to see where he's going to take it. But I think it's an incredibly important community on the internet. I myself have not become a practitioner in Reddit advertising because I respect the community too much to go in and quote unquote ruin it. And I haven't spent enough time really digging deep into the ad products. Though, you know what? This actually, this motivated me. I'm going to make a promise right now. By the time you probably listen to this, I'm going to be testing much more on Reddit.
Why do you continue to use Google+?
At the time this question was asked, I was still using Google Plus to distribute some of my content. I've stopped since then, though my answer is the same. And I've stopped because it's just, I've stopped because nobody's there. But the answer is people still are there. Believe it or not, you can still market on MySpace. The truth is I probably should. I might get motivated 2 times in a row here. I might go back to posting on there. I think literally the reason I'm not posting on Google Plus right now is I think my password got messed up and I can't do it from my phone. Like, it's literally that silly. Google Plus, I still have an audience there. I can still be doing things there. But the truth is when people leave, you know, it's like, why are you still giving keynote speeches at your high school gym when everybody left and you're just talking to an empty room? You probably shouldn't. And that's why I've stopped, and that's why many other people have stopped. And it's going to be interesting to see where Google's social play is in the future, or if they've just realized it's not in their DNA, and they'll win in search, and they'll win in mobile, and they'll win in a lot of other places, but social just passed them by.
What are your thoughts on the marketing opportunities in Yik Yak?
So this is a platform that I would be willing to say I was slightly wrong on. Let me explain. I was very vocal that the anonymous platforms were not going to win. Secret, Whisper, things of that nature. Yik Yak was anonymous. But what Yik Yak had was hyper growth on college campuses. Remember how much I love that demo? And it was my thought from afar that they were going to pivot and actually then make profiles and get away from anonymous. And I kind of projected my own strategy on what I thought they were going to do. It got big. And so it allowed me to actually talk about them in public in the way that I don't talk about Musically right now or other platforms that I'm watching very carefully because I hate being wrong. I went a little further with Yik Yak because I saw enough traction and could see the next chess moves. Since then, it's declined. It never made that pivot. Anonymous doesn't work, guys. Any place where we're allowed to be the worst versions of ourselves eventually become places none of us want to hang out. And so the marketing opportunities, I think, are waning, which is unfortunate. I think they have very smart founders, really interesting potential. But at this moment, as I record this, I don't see it.
Which industries do you think will leverage Meercat the best, and who is their target user?
At the time of this question, Meercat was on fire, which was a live streaming app. I quickly moved and invested in it in my Vayner RSC fund. For people that have been following my career, though, I'm not, as a matter of fact, it's happening right now in my actions. I'm only periscoping right now, and I'm not Meercatting, even though I invest in Meercat. Same thing I did with Foursquare and Gowalla. So at the time of this answer, I'm always my reputation matters more than any investment I make. So at the time, I talked a lot about Meercat as a QVC-like product because I still believe live streaming is very, very good for that. But it's clear right now that I should almost replace the word Meercat with Periscope, unless Ben, a CEO I believe in so much, can pivot the product and create more opportunities for Meercat to grow. But the live streaming on a phone thing is huge, right? If you think about it, breaking news, right? Humans being able to capture things before the TV cameras get there. QVC selling like dynamics, live talk shows, replicating what happens on radio during drive time radio. There's so many things that can happen with live stream apps. I'm very bullish on it. I used Facebook Live right now during this recording session. I'm a huge fan of all these platforms. You should pay attention to them.
What do you think of Yo's new updates? Can businesses use them to communicate to users?
At a time, I said, listen, if you're a business that thinks you can get value out of communicating to your audience on Yo, go do it. Yo was super interesting. It was a cute little kind of tech thing, but it ended up being more of a feature, in my opinion. I just don't see any excitement right this minute for businesses on Yo.
How will the world change in 2018 once the Apple Watch has probably become a vital part in everyone's lives?
The Apple Watch is not a vital part of anybody's life right now. And even though I was super excited about it and many others, it just didn't click. Google Glass, the wearable thing is tricky, man. You know, putting something on your body is different. That's going to be, by the way, whoever figures that out, you want to talk about $1 trillion business? So look, smartification of society is coming. Everything in our lives being smart is going to happen. The same way that everybody said the internet in 1996 was going to change the world in 2000. Yeah, it kind of started really changing in 2010, right? And so I think things like the watch and glasses and things of that nature is more a 2025 phenomenon than a 2016 phenomenon. And so I guess this is kind of fun to answer, which is I just don't think it's happening.
Disney's Magic Band. How do you see the space evolving? What do you think about the necessity for these online, offline bridge technologies?
I'm a huge fan of wearable technologies like I just referenced. I think it's a little far away, but the days of your sneaker talking to you, the days of getting a wristband that like follows everything you do, I'm excited about. I really want? I want a tool that actually tells me the exact calorie intake I'm taking day in and day out. You want to talk about a very easy way to lose weight? If I literally had it right on my wrist, I could just look at it. If I knew the exact number I was at, boy, even portion control, even if you educated on what the calorie count was, you bite one bite and it goes up. I mean, incredible stuff is coming. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's going to change our world. I do believe that the cell phone is the first step into us becoming robots. I think this next generation of products will show it even more with the glasses, the watch, and all that. And I think it's going to be a major industry in the next 30, 40, 50, forever years, really. I think we're in the dawn of the smartification of every product in the world. I think this water bottle sitting right next to me right now will eventually talk to me and say, hey, I'm getting too warm for consumption. Or, hey, if you're not going to use me on those plants over there. I think this is really, really coming.
What are your thoughts on Facebook advertising on television?
So Facebook was running ads in the UK, and this is where this came from, and I actually thought it was brilliant. And I know this is going to throw people literally just said, huh? Because I rail on TV advertising because I think it's overpriced, and it is. And because I'm a huge advocate of Facebook, why don't they run ads on their own platform? That's the point. They've basically gotten everybody on earth on the platform in countries that are allowed to market, except for a small group that is most likely watching TV. What Facebook is brilliantly doing is realizing that the small percentage of citizens that have not signed up for their account are probably on the older demo that are focused on TV, and they can absolutely advertise and convert them there. I applaud them for respecting the attention platform for the audience that they're trying to reach. They didn't do it in 07, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. They did it in 15. Right? And so I still think you should do every platform if you think it can bring value to you, as long as it's bringing you the most value for that dollar spent. Even though it's expensive for Facebook to run on TV, it's valuable because there's just no other way to get that person.
Hey, it's Zach again, and I designed the cover of this book, which you can't see because it's an audiobook, so you'll have to take my word for it. I just bought an indoor billboard company. How do you feel about advertising in the bathroom?
I'm a huge fan of it. I'm obsessed with attention. I don't care if it's digital or traditional or historic for that matter. When you take a pee and you're looking at the wall and you see an ad, you see it. Now, Do I like it as much as I liked it 3 years ago? No. Let me tell you why. Because now when I go take a pee, I'm looking at my phone simultaneously. And so are all the dudes at VaynerMedia. You guys know who you are. I see you every day. You're taking a pee and you're checking ESPN or Instagram. So it's not as valuable anymore because of consumer behavior. People's eyes have shifted. And so 4 or 5, 6 years ago, it was more valuable. But I'm still pretty bullish on it because some people still think it's not really clean to do that. And so they're respectful and they're consuming your ad at their eye level.
When will social marketing spending be bigger than television commercials?
So first, let's say this. Let's say that we can all agree that social marketing spending could be called internet platforms instead of social, because it gets tough here, but not banner ads, not Google AdWords, these Facebook, Snapchat, things of that nature. So if we continue to use that term, but I want to throw kind of, not YouTube, YouTube, things like that, a little bit different. I would say this, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care. I prefer that it happens later than sooner because that means I'll still be land grabbing actual attention while people overspend. And I really don't know. I know this, that the media buying agencies of the world are holding back the shift because they make more profit in other areas than they do here. It takes a lot to plan Facebook ads properly. And so in that way, it's going to take longer because there's humans that have vested interest in the old guard. But look, this is inevitable. I mean, anybody that looks at a 10-year-old in America, guys, there's nobody under 13 in America that watches television. I mean, just wrap your head around it. They are absolutely in their phones and their mobile devices. Like, yes, maybe the occasional Netflix. And think about that. That's not TV commercials. So this is happening whether you like it or not.
Hey, this is Scott Weidenkivowitz, photographer and educator at scottwyden.com. And here's my question for the Ask Gary V book. So I've been using Instagram with strategic tagging, hashtags, and also using the profile URL in order to drive some potential print sales. I've also been manually reaching out to local stores that might be interested in hanging my photos. Do you have any suggestions for me and other photographers about other ways to drive local print sales?
This is super cool. Great question. Thank you, Scott, for being so detailed with it. Look, I think both executions, it was fun for me to hear him talk about the URL in the profile that we talked about earlier, so Scotty's paying attention. I think one of the other ways is to search hashtags of the local area and reach out to those businesses and ask them if you can take over their Instagram for a week and then put out cool content on their platform, which also then tags your profile and gives you awareness with that audience. I think that's the number one tactic that photographers can use because they're getting awareness siphoned from a local audience, and then they get on your page and they can buy the prints there. I think the other way is, are actually kind of old school. I think, going door to door. This is a very weird answer. Knocking on people's door and calling people. Like, I want to say this because, guys, using a new technology to sell a physical good is something that I'm fascinated by because I don't want anybody to punt the old ways of selling physical goods. I don't think that Instagram and Facebook solves everything. I think the tried and true, I'm making people use the phone and call people more at Wine Library because it's valuable too. So I think this was a good opportunity to also say, listen, you can't just go all in social in the same way you can't just be all in on the old way.
If you created a social media platform, what would be the key feature and why?
Anybody who's been close to me, big shout out to MSG, Joe Stump, and all my homies. You guys know 6 years now, I've been talking shit, but I haven't executed about a social network that only allows you to post once a day. I'm a big fan of restrictions, and so I think that Snapchat and Twitter both won, disappearing in 24 hours or 140 characters. I love restrictions, and I think the ultimate restriction is stopping from people to yell every single thought and piece of crap content that's on their mind. If you could only say one thing every 24 hours, think about how valuable that would actually be. It would actually be the single most valuable thing you do, or more importantly, how much it meant to somebody if you said happy birthday to them because that was the most important thing to you that day. It ups the value. And so for a long time, I've wanted to build that.